welcome to the Doomscroll News Report here on Radio Taiwan International, where I, Amanda Stevens, just one writer today, but still political by necessity, cover some of the biggest international news stories dominating our news feeds from the last week. I'm Amanda Stevens, and this week I'm doing something a little different. We got a lot of good feedback from our good news story last week, and it gave me the idea to do sort of a palate cleanser episode. While I do try to keep most of my news talk stuck on the job, I can't always help myself, and sometimes I talk news with my friends while we're out and about, usually the bad stuff. So today's episode, I'll be sharing some good news stories from the last week or so, not only with you, but with all of the friends that I sometimes drag down in my own news feed. I hope that you can get as much out of this palate cleanser episode as we certainly do, but before I get too distracted, I'm just going to get right into it. And the first person that I had to approach was my friend Tyler, for whom I ruined a perfectly good coffee meetup by telling him about some political news in the United States. I tried to make it up with some good political news from the same government. Hey, it's me. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. The weather's not really great, but that's okay. I think I can make that work. So today is my chance to apologize to you for all the bad news that I dump on you in my off-air doom scrolling. To start, do you remember the last news story that we talked about and where I brought it up?
I do, yes. We were hanging out the last time, and I heard that the big, beautiful bill passed.
Well, today I'm going to make it up to you, but to start, I need to check with you. What do you know or remember about Flint, Michigan?
I do remember. Oh, yes. They were having a lot of problems last time I did hear about it. Their water supply was not doing so well.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember why?
I believe it was something to do with either the pipes or the source of the water, like gases coming out of through the sinks.
Dude, you're right on both accounts, which sucks.
Yeah.
So, first of all, the reason you probably don't remember, it surprised me, the Flint, Michigan water crisis was over 10 years ago now. It was in 2014, which...
Wow, I cannot believe it's been going on for that long.
I know. Well, I have some good news for you. But first, so that everybody knows why this is good news, unfortunately, you were right that it was the water supply and the pipes that caused a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who don't know, in the United States, the Flint water crisis caused a major scandal in 2014 for good reason, as Tyler just alluded to. In a nutshell, the town of Flint, Michigan switched their water supply from the nearby Detroit City supply to a more local source from the Flint River. But because the state didn't require treatment to prevent corrosion, lead leaked into the water from the pipes and exposed over 100,000 people to severe lead poisoning. This also included, after a week, the reason you were thinking of gases, after a week when they switched it, people were reporting dark, cloudy, even foamy water with a bad smell coming out of their pipes. And were originally told, don't worry, it's good. Obviously, it wasn't. So the city had to switch the water supply back to Detroit, and many residents had to buy bottled water and have been buying bottled water for the last decade because they can't use the tap water.
That's far too long.
I know. But the good news is, in 2017, the city was taken to court and told they had to replace the lead pipes in 3 years. So the process wasn't smooth, and there is a lot to criticize, frankly. For one, today is not 3 years after 2017. But on July 2nd, NBC and the environmental nonprofit NRDC, who originally sued to get the pipes replaced, announced that Flint has now replaced most of the lead pipes in the city.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. That is, how much are we talking? If it's most of them.
11,000 properties have been fixed. Or 11,000 pipes, property pipes, have been fixed. And over 28,000 affected properties have been fixed as well, because not all of them had bad pipes, but they had to basically check all the pipes. Also, the reason that it is only most of them is because originally people were allowed to opt out and vacant houses wouldn't be fixed. This is according to the AP. But last year, the town passed an ordinance that now makes opting out not possible. So they're working on a list from about 4,000 properties where there could be a lead line, and even sending letters and making in-person visits to try to close that up.
Oh, so that is good improvement. Like those numbers seem pretty big, but like what exactly is like the percentage that covers?
I don't know the percentage, but it's basically they are announcing it as though the program is now closed. And this is just
Hmm.
like the final last checkups for the houses that may have been missed. This is actually kind of
Hmm.
like a double good news. Well, I would say it's a good news. Like, there is a lot of bad news when we talk about how it was replaced because it was a very sloppy job, which is another reason it took this long. But the kind of
Hmm.
silver lining is that because of the Flint water crisis and the way that they repaired it, it helped other cities more quickly and efficiently replace their water supply, including Newark, New Jersey, which actually managed to replace all of their lead pipes in 3 years. Like, they looked at
Wow.
Flint and they were like, okay, we also have to fix ours. And they just did it.
Yeah, 3 years is also pretty quick
Yeah, to go through a whole city.
for
And that
that.
also included properties
Yeah.
where there were renters who didn't own the property and couldn't sign off. So they like had to quickly give renters the ability to approve property changes. And they had to
Hmm.
change laws. They had to enforce that people's houses were cleaned up after. And they did. Like, the Newark is a really big success story. And the Flint is also a big success story, but mostly because it was originally such a big
Hmm.
dumpster fire
Well, yeah, well
story.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but literally fire.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of them did
Yeah.
catch on fire, but there is actually a long
Yeah.
history of lakes and rivers and water sources in the United States catching on fire because they're so
Yeah.
polluted.
Ugh.
The last question that I'll ask, though, is it's a double question, but one of them is easy. Did you ever
Mhm.
expect to hear good news about Flint? And also, does this make up for the last story that we talked about when we were hanging out and I shared my doom scroll feed with you?
I would say yes, that is good news. I hope it is enough for the people of Flint, Michigan, but I mean, it seems like a pretty big step in a direction that has been left abandoned for far too long. So, yeah, absolutely. And on behalf of the second one, I'd say yeah, that makes up for it. I would say, on
Thank
the
you.
scale of good news, bad news, I think the scales have tipped ever so slightly
I'm
towards the
working my way
better.
back into good news.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, okay. I'll try to find more good news for next time. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me today, Tyler.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Amanda.
Next up was my coworker, Michelle. You guys know her, you heard her, you love her from many shows, but especially from Geek Out, which is on every Thursdays. And while it's true that we both work in the news, sometimes that means that we get stuck in a cycle where we drag each other down. So, since Michelle is an avid environmentalist, I wanted to share a little bit more uplifting environmental news, this time from South America. Hey there, how are you today?
It is a rainy Saturday and I'm at home, so it's nice.
Yeah. Well, so today I told you a little bit about this idea, but today is my chance to apologize to you for all of the times that I doom scroll when we are together. Unfortunately, because we work like we are desk mates in that way,
Mhm.
it's a lot. There's a lot.
Well, it's not something that I don't completely understand, considering that we work in media together. So.
That's right. That's right. Well, to get that off my chest, what was the last time? I guess I should ask, do you remember the last news story that we talked about and where I brought it up? It was at work, probably.
It was so totally at work because I tend not to bring work home with me because sometimes it is very depressing. I do not
Yes.
don't doom scroll on my own.
I think you're better about it than I am.
So I think you were writing about the Texas floods that just happened.
Yes.
And yep.
Yes. And I couldn't help myself. I had to get more information. I did need it for the article, but I also definitely was reading it for myself as well.
Hmm.
So, and I was for sure telling you about that. I think we've already reported on that one, so I'm not going to give a quick summary of it this time. But if you are curious about it, you should definitely read about it. Texas is going through it. But today, Michelle, I'm not here to talk to you about that. I'm here to share a good news story for you. And it is
Yay.
also related to the climate. I'll say this. I'm going to start by asking you kind of like a vibe question. What sort of environmental news do you typically expect from South America?
Oof. Forest fire,
Hmm.
generally, because of, certain political figures in power who will not relinquish it and really don't care about what do they call that? It's the process of clearing land for grazing or farm
Oh,
or crops by burning.
yes.
Yeah, there's a word for it,
I
but
know.
I
There is a
forget.
word for it. I also don't remember it.
Yep. So I would
Man.
expect forest fire.
hmm I feel like we're gonna remember the word like halfway through this article. It's
Oh,
just gonna be
totally.
like, gah. Okay. Well, then I hope you really like today's news. Now, unfortunately, yours has the most news to summarize. So I'm just gonna
Okay.
kind of like go off. But if you have questions, please ask me because this is a very big story,
Okay.
which is actually great, I think. So, first of all, did you know that there's an Inter-American Court of Human Rights?
No, but that actually sounds, if it was effective, it sounds good.
Yeah. So I learned about that court today well, not today, but like earlier this week when I was reading about this story. And it mostly functions for Central and South America. And so this is like a coalition of judges. It's based in Costa Rica and it rules on like issues of human rights, usually brought by states, but not exclusively brought by states. And in the next story, you can use state in place of like a country or a governing body, right? Because that's
Ah,
going to come up a lot. So here we go. I'm going to call them the IACHR, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. So
sure.
the IACHR ruled that climate change carries an extraordinary risk to all, especially those who are most vulnerable. And in a new landmark ruling just about a week ago, they ruled that individuals have a human right to a stable climate, charging states with a duty to protect it. So
Excellent.
the ruling is crazy long. It's literally 234 pages. So we're not going to cover all of it. But and it took them over a year to decide because they had hearings last year in Barbados and Brazil. And the like suit or the question was originally brought to the court by Colombia and Chile in 2023. So you can see how it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
But I will go over a couple of highlights from the ruling. And I got these from an article by Isabella Kaminsky in The Guardian. So good on her for getting through all of this. Here are the highlights. The IACHR said that states have a legal obligation to regulate emissions from public and private organizations, and they singled out businesses in the exploration, extraction, transportation, and processing of fossil fuels, and cement manufacturing, and agro industries as bearing an especially high responsibility for being especially bad. So kind of that like clear-cut burning thing, they would be in this. They also recommended stricter actions from states against these industries, including changing operation conditions, taxes, and laws so that transnational companies would have to either cooperate, move out, or pay up if they don't comply. However, they also called out the states themselves not to ruin their own environment, such as mining for critical resources like those used in electric vehicles. And they also said that states have an obligation to restore damage to ecosystems caused by climate change or these actions. It is worth noting that the article states that this document and ruling is not technically binding because this is an international court. However, they are still considered authoritative because they summarize existing law. So the IACHR took great pains to look through all of the existing laws that they could find and also comparing like their ruling and climate conditions to other rulings that were made by like inter-American societies and international organizations. So it is expected that this ruling will be brought up in future litigation and in political negotiations in the future.
Okay.
What do you think? And
This is
how does this make you feel?
fantastic news. Oh, it makes me feel a little bit better.
hmm
I am, well, most people don't, considering how much I like to crack jokes and share fun stuff rather than doomscroll. Most people would assume that I'm fairly optimistic, but all of that is actually to mask this sense of impending
Doom,
annihilation. That's
dread.
yes, it's dread,
hmm
and I'm generally a cynic when it comes to what people are doing to our planet, especially because I'm an avid ocean uh, ocean activities person.
hmm hmm
So this actually makes me feel a little bit better. It's, as you say, it's not binding, but it will put more pressure on governments and states
hmm
to not do really terrible things,
Yeah.
or at least lean on, in the case of private corporations,
Yeah.
to lean on them a little bit more heavily to
better.
operate more cleanly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do better.
I will say, because I was a little bit nervous at first, but when I was reading through it, this whole article, like I said, if you're interested, I would recommend it to anyone who's listening. Look it up in The Guardian. It's a long read, but it's a long ruling. I found it very interesting because the court gave specific examples of like, here's how you can tax people. Here's what you should require them to do. Here are the penalties involved. And it really seemed like it was very direct in like, here's actionable things you can and should be doing.
That is the most important thing that any constructive criticism can bring to the table is like actionable steps. Because if you just say, oh, you shouldn't blah, 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 and then leave it at that, then a lot of people are kind of at a loss for what to do next. Like, how do they proceed in the quote correct direction? So that's fantastic. Yeah.
I also hope I would say the other thing that gave me a little bit more hope, because I, especially when it comes to like these international courts, sometimes I get a little bit like jaded. This gave me a little bit more hope in that the question or the suit was brought by two separate countries or two separate states. So my hope is that since there were countries who were involved in bringing this question before the international court, it's because they have an interest in getting litigation on the books that they can then use probably to sue private organizations or to like put pressure on private and transnational organizations by getting like this larger ruling. So to me, that's kind of something that gave me a little bit more hope about it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us people who try to live, make personal choices that are more sustainable or green, it's kind of sad because it's the vast majority of damage to our environment and the contributor to climate change is not the small personal decisions of whether or not you choose to use a straw or take a plastic bag. It's really decisions that are made by these multinational giant corporations and governments and their policy and how well those are enforced. So if this can, make some movement in a better direction, I'm all for it. Makes me feel a little better.
Yeah, and it is nice to hear that a stable climate is a human right, which I think is something we need to keep coming back to. The last question for you, Michelle, does this make up for the last time that I was talking to you about climate issues and doom scrolling on office hours?
Actually, yes, very much. Because the flooding in Texas, I am going to attribute to climate change because disasters like that are happening more and more often.
Oh,
so
there's a huge systematic failure, but I can't talk too much about it because I said that's not the focus of this episode. That might be the focus of the next episode, but it's not the focus of this episode. So,
cool.
Thank you for your time today, Michelle. I'll see you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
And last but not least was my friend Kat. As one of my best friends and somebody who is familiar with where I come from, sometimes that means she's one of the first people I go to with bad news. So I knew that she was one of the first people I had to talk to when I saw this story in my feed about cities in Europe in an activity that I'm sure she'd love to join in. Okay, hey, how are you today, Kat?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing well. I'm really excited to share the story that I found because I think it's right up your alley, so I can't wait. But before that, this is an apology to you, first of all, in part, because I tend to dump my doom scrolling worries on you as well, off air. So do you remember the last news story that we talked about?
The last news story that we discussed was relating to the Trump's wonderful, big, beautiful bill.
Which we definitely love.
Oh, yes. It's our absolute favorite. Exactly. That reaction. Exactly. And we were talking about the land auctions.
Yes.
That the senator from Utah had tried to include.
Yeah. Listeners should be very familiar with this because when I tell you listeners out there who are in the future, I was very concerned about this. Like, that's why I brought it up. I couldn't stop talking about it or thinking about it. It was on my mind. It was on my feed.
Yes.
But it sucked. Now, you actually shared some good news with me, though. Like today, you flipped my script.
Yeah. Exactly. I was researching more about it this morning or earlier today and discovered that he has pulled that part from the bill.
Yay!
So it's no longer included. Yes.
Oh, that gives me.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's still a huge worry. There's still so much to worry
The
about
rest of it
about
is
this bill.
so bad.
But there's one less thing in there now.
Yeah,
So,
that actually like made me like laugh and like out loud exclaim with like joy. It's like, yes.
when I screenshotted the article I sent it to you because
Yes.
I was like, this is what we were talking about,
This
right?
is exactly what we were
Like,
talking about.
my brain was like, hold on, did
We've
I
talked about this
misremember?
recently. No, that was it.
Yes.
I just hadn't seen it yet because because you know what? And this is, I guess, one reason to do this, because good news doesn't get circulated as much as bad news.
Exactly.
But here we are.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to return the favor. I would like to introduce a story that you may have heard of, but I hope you didn't, just so I can surprise you. So,
Okay.
first, important background information. You did used to
Yes.
live in Europe, yes?
I did used to live in Europe, yes. I lived in Germany.
Now, did you ever make it to Paris?
I did, yes.
You did? Can you tell me what you remember about
did.
Paris?
When we went to Paris, I was quite young.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest memory of Paris is going to be the Eiffel Tower, of course,
Mm-hmm,
but also Disney World,
Oh,
Disneyland.
yeah, there is a Disney
Disneyland
Paris. Yeah.
And then we visited Notre Dame, and my sister and I, because we went all the way up to the top of Notre Dame, and my sister and I pretended to be gargoyles.
Oh, how cute.
And so we were quite young, but that was our like lovely little memory.
Okay, well, here's a way you could go back and make at least two of those spots even more memorable. So,
Okay, I'm
as you
excited.
can guess, this story takes place in Paris. I thought that it was brand new because I just saw it on my feed like yesterday, but apparently it's a week old, according to the BBC. Thomas McIntosh reported that the River Seine is now open for public swimming. So,
Oh, interesting.
many of us, if you're like me, a lot of us remember the hot debate during the Olympics with river pollution levels, things like that.
Yes.
I don't know if you were
I do
following that
remember
very
that.
closely. So they did clean it up enough for that race, right? But it was kind of contested. It was
Yes.
kind of like on and off and on and off. Actually, apparently this is a really long time coming because swimming has been banned for almost 100 years, since the 1920s, because it's been so gross and dangerous from boat traffic, pollution, and gross fecal matter. So, and it did make people sick. It could and did make people sick. So officials had promised to make it swimmable in the 80s, and it took a lot of work, but now they have opened 3 new swim sites, and it is seen as a keystone legacy, to quote the article, of the Paris Olympics. And actually, there was another interesting article from the New York Times that said the reason they wanted to clean it up in the Olympics was because they thought that that would be a good way to convince Parisians that it was safe to swim in again. Like this was part of fulfilling a really long-term promise. So, as of last Saturday, 3 swimming sites are open to the public until the end of August. All of them are free, although only at scheduled times, and there are age limits depending on where you want to swim because it still has a current. And there are lifeguards on duty, showers, and changing rooms. And the swimming locations, I'm so glad you told me about your vacation, Kat, because these specialized swimming locations are near the Notre Dame Cathedral, one of them in eastern Paris, and a third one, of course, is near the Eiffel Tower. So you could go swim there.
That.
Yes. So there's like places where up to 300 people can like lounge on the side of the river in towels or on like beach furniture. And there are other swim sites as well. 2 of them are in a tributary in the Parisian suburbs. Now, are you curious about the cleanliness?
I am.
Because I was. So I checked the New
Yes.
York Times. The New York Times article was literally titled, "You Can Swim in the Seine. Trust me, I did it." And so the woman who wrote it talked about like she and other Parisians were really suspicious, but all of these sites have been tested. They test the waters every 2 hours in these sites specifically, and it's proven that these sites are safe to swim in 80 to 93% of the time as per European standards. That margin of error, though, is actually pretty easy to predict because it usually comes after rain, since there's like runoff because it still runs through the middle of a city.
Right.
Yes.
That
yes.
makes sense.
And all of the sites also have like a safety indicator flag that is raised for when it is safe to swim in and when it's not. So would you try it? And how do you feel about this news?
I love this news. This is great. I would absolutely love to go swimming in the Seine.
Well, I found out through this that there's like a long history pre the 1920s of people swimming in the Seine.
I mean, why wouldn't you? Yeah, if it's you have this river available to you, why wouldn't you swim in it?
I know.
I love that.
Yeah. It also kind of struck with me that I often hear the Olympics usually talked about in like a negative way that they change cities. And so to me, this was like a really big, not a surprise because I knew that they were trying to do this, but it's one of the few kind of like Olympic success stories that I've heard where like people can say,
win for sure.
Yeah, or people can say like after the Olympics, a good thing happened. And they were like, and this was good. And we think the Olympics, which is, I think, very unusual.
Yeah, I like that.
So the last question is easy. Does this, well, maybe it's easy. I don't know. Does this make up for the doomscroll stories that I told you last week?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I feel like we all get caught up in doom scrolling and things can be so negative all the time.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear positive stories.
It
just
is.
kind of, you're like, oh, actually, there are good things too in the world.
The world's a good place. And look up the pictures for listeners and for you personally. I think you would really like them. They're all very like, it's very idyllic looking. It looks like a fun, obviously picturesque place to be. It's in the middle of France, but like it's a very like nice picture of summer.
Nice.
So,
I'll have to Google.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
And that's it for today's news report. I hope that you enjoyed our little good news special and that it did help kind of improve your day and get you in the right mood to move forward for your week. A quick reminder that you can still find all of the referenced articles that I mentioned in the show notes for today's episode. I'm Amanda Stevens, and I'll be back next week with a special interview. But for now, thanks for joining me on air today. Tune in tomorrow for more programs by Radio Taiwan International. And in the meantime, remember to stop scrolling and touch grass. I'll see you next week.
Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, SoundOn Podcast, Spotify, you name it, we're on it. You can find selected shows produced by RTI's English team on different streaming services. All you have to do is search for the show or type RTI. Find an episode you find interesting, hit play, and you'll learn more about Taiwan and its people.